My name is Juan Sequeda. I am now the principal researcher at ServiceNow. Was at data.world. We just got announced the acquisition a couple weeks ago. And I am here to talk about kind of a little bit of a journey that I've been going through in my own career. One from seeing and actually myself trying to boil the ocean, and another one of doing all of these kind of point-to-point, kind of ad hoc different types of solutions and reporting. So, by the way, just one thing, it's 40 minutes, not 30, right? Okay. So raise your hand if you felt or you've been part of boiling the ocean type of situation. Come on, I think that should be a little more hard. And then raise your hand if you've been part of like, I'm building all of these point-to-point solutions, ad hoc type of reporting type of thing. Okay, everybody, yeah? So I think this is kind of the story of our lives. So the takeaways, in case you need to leave for some reason, is that we're three things. Governance is about being active. We need to iterate with methodologies. We have to stop being ad hoc. And finally, we actually need to understand how our organizations work and understand the politics of things. I think that's something that's stopping. And then the only publicity here is the podcast. I'm curious. Raise your hand if you listen to our podcast or no. All right, couple hands. Thanks. Yeah, so Tim Gasper and I have been doing Cataloging Cocktails, honest, no BS data podcast now for 5 years. So please listen, join us. We have a lot of really cool stuff, and a lot of people listen to learn a lot about it. So, okay. All right. Governance. Kind of sounds like the most boring word. And it's usually the naysayers. It's like, those governance people, I want to go talk to them. So, but here's the thing, so what is data governance? And for starters, let's put this word governance aside. Let's forget about that. What do we really want to accomplish? I really want alignment with our stakeholders. I want alignment to make sure, hey, if we do this, and is that what you want, right? Like that's what we should be kind of achieving. We want clarity. It's like, wait, when you talk about customer, what do you mean by customer? When you talk about net revenue, what do you mean by net revenue? Oh, okay, let's identify what that clarity is. I want to trust it. I want to be able to deliver data people can go hit the ground running, and they know they can go trust that. I want people to consume that data. They know, oh, that data, I know I can just hit the ground running with that. This trust. We want to be able to iterate. We don't want to boil the ocean, right? We want to be able to start small and have those quick wins. We want to make sure that we're focusing on value, right? That we're producing something that the business needs, and it's actually moving forward the organization. And we want to make sure that, hey, data is actually being used, and like we're empowering people to go do things. I want the organizations, our stakeholder people, to do freaking amazing, valuable things as fast as possible in the safest manner. That's what we should all be accomplishing. Everybody, all the work that we do, that's what we should be accomplishing. And you know what? I think that's what you're trying to already do. So my argument is that you are already doing governance. Probably not in the best way, and I think the whole point is that how do we do this better? So, on the podcast, probably 5 years ago, there's this guy, when we started the podcast, we had like a live Zoom session. There's this guy called Mark Kitson who's over there. Actually, okay, I'm super excited I get to say this right in front of him for the first time. So he brought up, why do cars have brakes? Somebody show me an answer. Yes, right? Safety, stop. Whoa, slow down. But cars also have brakes, so it can enable me to drive fast safely. So we always think about governance as the compliance naysayers. Let's make sure nothing bad happens because regulations are going to get fined and PII. That's true. We need to be careful about that. But if our focus is to make sure that bad things don't happen, then guess what? Just make sure nobody freaking touches the data, and then nothing bad is going to happen. But nothing good is going to happen. And I think the governance, and those governance people who you talk to, or who you probably don't talk to because they're the naysayers, they have that attitude, which is, hey, governance, I don't want bad things to happen. Like, well, here's all these policies you're going to go do. You have to follow it because we don't want bad things to happen. We need to have this mind shift of saying, no, We need to make sure how to make sure, let's make sure we don't let bad things happen, but I want amazing things to happen with the data. And there's a balance to that. So how do we achieve this? One, so there's this notion that that I'm calling here now minimal valuable governance. On one of the panels today, I think it was the interview said just enough, right? Just enough. And this isn't brand new. This isn't new. But what is important here is not the minimal viable; it's the minimal valuable. And actually, we had a couple of podcast episodes this season with Winfred Edsel and also Rebecca O'Kill. He's the chief data officer at Access Capital. And we were going into this whole notion of what is minimal valuable governance. And it's super simple. It's just you focus only on what's needed to unlock value. And by the way, I'm kind of saying obvious things here, but sadly, I would say, we got to state the obvious over and over again. So what is a minimal valuable governance? So let's take those things that I said, right? What is alignment? Let's make sure that wherever we're focusing on, I have spoken to the right people. I know who is asking for this, why they're asking for this, what they need, how are they going to consume this. I want to be able to have that alignment with those stakeholders. Clarity. Let's make sure that we're doing all of this data work for some particular domain concept, call it customer or whatever, or product or whatever you want to call it, net revenue. Let's make sure we have a clear understanding for that. And the moment that we start going off on tangents about what this could be, what that could be, you're like, whoa, wait, do we need to even have this conversation to provide the value we need to go do? We don't. So guess what? We're not going to talk about that. Trust. You need enough quality. And not all, I know we get so obsessed with quality, and there's not just there's only one way of doing quality. Now, you need to understand what is the type of quality for what particular use case, and therefore, if you make things explicit and you understand who your users are, you're like, wait, the data has this certain level of quality because that's the use case. You're interested in using that data for that other use case, you probably have a different level of trust or quality expectations. I'm not delivering that. So I'm actually explicitly telling you that's not what you should be using that for. Iterative, right? Again, I think sometimes we get into the whole perfection, right? Perfect is the enemy of good. And I think we talked earlier also in the data modeling panel, like one of the issues that happens is that you want to, again, boil the ocean, create the perfect thing. And no, we need to really iterate fast. And I'd argue you can do good data modeling in one or a couple of sessions. Literally in a day, you should be able to go get something out. And value, again, this needs to be very clear value propositions. You need to have very clear outcomes, not outputs. I don't care here's the thing. People are going to say, well, I'm going to pick on the term, on data products, for example. People will say, that's a dashboard can't be a data product. That is an output port of this thing. I'm like, look, if that's what people want, I'm meeting the users what they want, I'm building something, I'm understanding the requirements, and I'm moving fast around this, and that's the value they care about, then I'm going to call that a data product because it's making people happy, valuable, and being able to provide those outcomes that they need. We have to stop being pedantic around things too. And enablement. Governance is about enabling. Actually, a lot of people we talk about is like, we shouldn't call it data governance. We should call it data governance and enablement. That is a big thing. And thanks to ChatGPT, I was able to come up with this nice little acronym, ACT. That's what I remember. So how do we actually start doing this kind of think about this as a little framework here. At the end of the day, just do the minimal stuff that is needed to provide value, right? This is kind of probably even too much information over there. But now there's this notion that I'm calling embedded governance. I think one of the things that has happened historically when it comes to governance, and if we look back at like where governance comes from, the modern governance of today is a lot from the banking era for 2008. All right, so the financial crisis. After that, we had a big regulation called BCBS 239, which basically told the banks, you have to make sure that we know where your data is coming from. You have to have clear data models. That's why lineage became a big thing, because we need to understand where everything is coming for reporting and so forth. And then this became kind of that ivory tower approach, saying, oh, we're the governance team, the compliance, we're coming up with these policies, and guess what? You have to go work on this, and you have to go do this, and here's what I'm telling you what to go do. Who likes to be told how to do their job? No. And this is why we're the naysayers. That's why those policies end up being some document. And they end up being the minimal stuff that like nobody cares about, but you just because you need a checkbox. So you're doing it just to make sure bad things don't happen, but you're really not doing anything, right? And at the end, now in the era of AI, we want to enable that amazing things happen. So the problem is that we've had this top-down ivory approach, and we need to stop that. So here's the thing: embedded governance is that you can do governance without a governance team. This is my bold statement. If you happen to be, your title is Director of Data Governance, and you have a team of data governance, data stewards, I'm sorry, I think we got to disband that now. And because that's the type of culture that's being kind of presented as being top down in ivory tower. And so we need to shift from that ivory tower to everyday operations. So how are we doing this? So this is what I've been observing from companies. Again, I'm really lucky I get to talk to hundreds and hundreds of data leaders, practitioners on the podcast with customers and prospects and stuff. And I'm seeing kind of the patterns that I'm like, okay, these are where people are being successful at. The first is having this separation of what you're calling the front office and the back office. So the front office are the ones who are like now dealing with the business. They're the ones who are asking all the whats and the whys. And the back office is where you actually now have your technical data teams who are managing your data platform, their architectures, right? They're dealing with the how. We need to have both of these teams. But I think it's how we start kind of presenting them. Who's the front office and who is the back office? So ask yourselves, who's doing the what? Who's doing the why? Who's doing the how? And if if people here are data engineers, technical, they're doing the how, inside your teams, inside your organizations, who are doing those whats and those whys? Because the work that you do, you should be able to connect it to the what and the why. And arguably, if you can't, that's a huge freaking problem. So then there's the aspect of culture. And culture is what is just normal here. So I've worked with oil and gas companies, and something early on that I learned, I remember I was at the headquarters at Exxon. First time going down the stairs, and I'm walking in the middle of the stairs. I don't know if people have ever worked with oil and gas companies, but the safety culture is that you always have to have your hand on the handrail. You have to have like 3 points in the ground. I know this whole thing. And yeah, it's important because when you're on a boat, you're in the middle of the ocean, like things happen, you have to always be secure. But they keep this culture of security. They're saying, we're going to do this all the time. If you walk in at home or whatever building and you see a hole in the wall, what are you going to do? Just ignore it? Are you going to take a painting and cover it up and not tell anybody about that? No. You're at least going to tell somebody about that. I mean, we today have all this culture of I'm just put a Band-Aid on it. This is a cultural change. This is a leadership change. This is leadership drives this. So this is culture. Again, we talked about how work is done, but the goal here is that we need to embed governance in the way we do things. So, for example, I am actually in our data teams outside in data.world right now at ServiceNow, we actually have all the contracts, all the stuff we do within our pipelines. So whenever data is pushed, it automatically triggers, and it won't go into production if it doesn't pass the test. Those tests that's already setting those expectations, the quality, that's governance right there. And it's just part of, first of all, it's part of how we do it. So we establish that from the beginning. And second, it's done automatically. Nobody needs to go run anything afterwards. That's so think about how you can embed these types of aspects of governance within your day-to-day. And finally, I did say that, hey, those governance folks, we should disband the governance team. But I think the reason why they have existed is because, look, at the end of the day, we've been kind of figuring out this data world. We're flying the plane and building at the same time. And I think we need to see a change right now. And these folks have been the pioneers. They have been literally the ninjas, right? Or like going in the middle of the jungle and figuring something out and kind of figuring out that path and then telling people to go build with the bulldozer and stuff. But that's probably not working anymore, but they have so much experience. I think it's an opportunity right now to take the folks who have done this work and become like those personal trainers, kind of teach other people how to go do the stuff that they're doing and figure out how to embed that. So I want to roll up my sleeves a little bit and kind of go through it in a process, because I think one of the things that we see a lot when it comes to governance is really it's the people and the process part. And so over many years now, I've kind of come up with this methodology, which I call the pay-as-you-go methodology, to be able to do your data and knowledge work. And it's actually 3 phases. The first input is the set of business questions that you want to go answer. And I literally mean you need to be able to go get a set of questions, which are the most important questions that your organization needs to be able to answer. And your organizations, you should all know what are the top level objectives of your company for the year, what are the OKRs, all the way how they roll up, and what are the questions that people are asking at the top. Go get that list of questions and prioritize them, figure out which are the ones that are the most important, the most painful, and literally let's start with one. An example, I remember a long time working with a customer, they had a daily or weekly email going out of the net sales of the entire of everything that they were selling. It was an e-commerce retail company. It was an email sent out. So this was 10, 15 years ago, probably 10 years ago. So and the problem was that people did not trust that email at all. And this is an email that was sent to the entire executive team. And it was all about presenting what was the net sales of orders by different regions. So let's just take that one question. What are the net sales of orders by different regions? And you want to be able to go through a whole phase we're going to call it a knowledge capture phase. And then we're going to be able, and I'll go through these 3 phases in a second, but understand what that is. Let's go really unpack one single question, and we're going to generate what I call a knowledge report. And then once I understand what that question is, that knowledge report is going to go in, we're going to actually go implement what that knowledge is. And the result of that knowledge will be all the connection of the data or the data sets, the data products, your graph, their knowledge graph, but it's the data that is needed to be able to answer that particular question. And then you want to be able to give access to that knowledge. And this is where you're going to go present it back to the people who were actually asking that question originally, and they should be able to go answer that question. And if they're able to answer that question, you know that you've been successful, and then you can continue to iterate with the next question. And what we'll see is that when that happens, you realize, oh, that work that I did in that first cycle to answer that one question, that could answer many other questions already. And the whole goal here is to think about how we can do this at scale. How do I make sure that 1 + 1 is greater than 2? I have this whole process in the book that I wrote, Designing and Building Enterprise Knowledge Graphs. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, just add a note, and then I'll just send you a link. I'll give you the PDF. So knowledge capture, this phase. What I want to go do, if we take that particular question, for example, what are the net sales by region, all the net sales of orders by region? Let's go analyze, first of all, let's analyze that question. Who's asking that question? Why are they answering that question? How are they doing that today? What are the problems with that question, how it's being answered? What happens if we don't answer that? How painful is the process of generating that question, right? Where does this live? How often does it need to be consumed? Like, this is like your typical who, what, where, when, why, how, all that type of stuff. You want to be able to ask all of these questions, and that means that you need to start talking to many more people. You want to be able to collect as much documentation around this so people really understand the how. And what you're going to do is start developing this knowledge report. This knowledge report is effectively, if you look at the data modeling discussion, I think Patrick was talking about, like, at the end of the day, everything comes up with, like, what are your business entities? What are the relationships between those business entities? And what are the things that describe those business entities? So literally, you do these 3 things. You're like, let's keep track of the concepts that were discussed. Oh, orders. Okay, that's a concept, all right? Orders, right? There's customers, okay? There's regions, different regions, okay? Let's be able to figure out what is that concept in there. Are people using different words that describe that same concept? By the way, where is this in the data? Right? So I'll talk a little bit about how we should go from, like, the business level down to the technical level. This is how you're maybe reverse engineering that, because it's all inside of some dashboard, because you're looking at some DBT models, you're looking at some stored procedures, like, and some Excel spreadsheets. Like, you really want to understand how this is happening today. You want to be able to, the attributes that describe this. So what are the attributes? Well, net sales are part of an order, right? Okay, there's an order date, right? What is the time zone of the order date? Because if they're looking at for today, what does today mean in this global organization? Like, that type of stuff is what you want to be able to understand. And what are the relationships, right? Oh, okay, so an order, a customer places an order, so and then an order can be shipped to an address, and there's a billing, like there's a cardinality relationship. Those are all business rules that you're starting to define. We are starting to catalog a bunch of knowledge just by understanding that one question. Now let's go implement that. By understanding that one question, I'm thinking about, oh, there's a concept called order. There's a concept called customer. A customer places an order. Remember that the question was how many orders by region? Wait, so if a customer lives in a particular region, but they ship it to another region, which one is it? All right, oh, I don't know. Like, what is the right answer? Like, this is the type of questions we should be going back and talking again back to the stakeholders and so forth. So I want to be able to kind of understand what that is, and I want to go implement this. You're going to implement this inside of your views or your DBT models or whatever pipelines you're doing, in your Python code, whatever. Implement this in your mappings and your transform. Then you're going to go create your data product, whatever it is. Is it going to be one white table? However you want it, however this is going to be presented back. And this is where you're going to do all your validation and your data quality. You understand what are the expectations. This is how you're implementing this knowledge. And then once I'm like, here's this knowledge there, I need people to go access it. Do they want to access it through a dashboard, through creating is it a SQL, or is it an API, is it a new AI agent, whatever we want to go do. And then you understand who those business stakeholders are, and they're like, you should now be able to go answer that question. And you give it to them, and they're answering that one specific question. And they're like, this looks great. I validated it, I've tested it, we've put this out into a bunch of our initial users. They're all giving it the thumbs up, like, let's go push this. And guess what? This was super, super small. Like when we do this entire process, what we see the first cycle, you're literally creating probably 2-3 different concepts, 2-3 different relationships, 5 to 10 attributes. That's it. So you close that cycle, and then what we're going to go iterate is what you realize, first of all, people are actually starting to go answer that question, right? Did they get that? And then you realize, wait, I did all that work to answer that one question. But now I should be able to answer a lot more other questions over that model that I have. And then if I look at that original set of questions that I started out with, my prioritized list of questions, then I may realize that the question number 5, 7, 13, 18, right? Those are already getting answered with the model that I have already defined. And then you start iterating. Then you start reprioritizing things. Another important thing that I'm seeing is that we really need to showcase our work. And something that I've seen a lot of, like the most strategic data leaders, is that they literally go on a roadshow and they present their work to the rest of the C-suites, the rest of other departments. Said, hey, look, we are doing this project for finance, and this is what they're able to go answer. And they go off and they present to the marketing team. Hey, FYI, here's what you're doing. Maybe it's something you can go use. And they go off around that, and they get more requirements. They build excitement. That's the snowball that we're doing. That's the enablement that we're delivering. But so to do this entire process, something that I've observed also is really understanding the notion of being strategic or being operational. I think what's really important is that people be honest with themselves and saying, am I an operational person or am I a strategic person? By the way, there's nothing wrong with any of these things. It's just understanding who you are. Like operational, you roll up your sleeves and you're knocking off code and stuff. Strategic, yeah, you're more at let's be honest, a little bit more at the blah, blah, blah level. You need to go to convert things down. At the end of the day, they need to be converted into people need to roll up their sleeves and do this stuff. Strategy is where this business strategy is what's driving the business. We're gonna, our north is that way. We're gonna go do these things, and people are just saying it, and they need to get translated all the way down to actually the folks who are rolling up their sleeves and doing the work. And I'm calling this the elevator. So the top floor, the penthouse, is where the strategy is done. That's where the C-suite lives. And the bottom, the engine room, that is where all the work gets done. And what happens is that so much gets lost in translation. So you're at the bottom, and you're doing all this work, and you don't even know, like, I'm just doing it because I was told to go do, but like, why? How is this connected to a particular strategy? And I think well, the message I want everybody to take away here is you should ask why. And if your manager can't tell you why, keep asking why. Because guess what? Your manager is disconnected also in this elevator because your manager doesn't know about this stuff. So your manager should be going like, go up why and so forth. And this notion of the elevator is not new. I am taking this from Gregor Hope's notion of the architect elevator. Who's familiar with Gregor Hope? This is amazing technology. He has this book on the architect elevator, right, for software architecture. He has 3 rules. He said the most valuable architects, let's replace architect with data architect or data engineer, whatever, is the ones who can cover more levels in an organization. So if you're up in the operational level, ask yourself, like, do I want to stay in the operations? Which is fine, right? We need people in the engine room, right? Rolling up their sleeves and just being the best damn engineer. But also, if you want to strive to be on the strategic level, right? Maybe it's an opportunity to figure out how to go up. And on the other way too, like if you're a strategic level, probably a way to say, I want to understand where my limits are. I want to go down, and I can't get, that my level of expertise ends up on the 5th floor. I still need to go down, but I want to know who are my deputies who will be able to continue going down. But the best architects are the ones who can go up and down. And I see this as a real job opportunity for people who want to push themselves. Second, architects aren't the smartest people in the room. Just because you can go up and down doesn't mean that, oh, you're like, oh, wow, you're the unicorn. No, actually, your goal is to make sure that you're helping other people to be smarter because every floor, there's people in every floor, and you want those people every floor, you want to empower them to understand what they're doing and why they're doing. And executive conversations have the same depth as technical conversations. This is not about dumbing it down, which is what we talk about. Oh, they don't understand. They're not technical enough. You should stop saying that. That's actually kind of rude. Because they're strategic, maybe operational. We need to be able to collaborate. And this architect who goes on the elevator is the one who's helping everybody to be smarter. So going up and down this entire elevator is what I call, going up and down the elevator is you want to start building what I call this iron thread. If we go back to the entire, that methodology that I was talking about, we built a thread that describes that one question. And I understood from the strategy, here is that question. What are the net sales of orders by region? I understand why we're doing that. And then I realized, okay, let's go down. Oh, orders. Okay, we go down and like, we start talking, we realize orders means different things to different people. Orders for the product team means when the user clicked checkout. Oh, orders for the shipping is when the product left and is going to be delivered. Orders for the finance team is when the money came in the bank. Oh, so there's different definitions of orders. Okay, now we know that. We got that at a different level. And then we go, okay, but where does this come? Oh, well, these folks orders are looking at the ERP system. This looking for orders are looking at the order management system. Oh, okay. This is the other set of orders are looking at their own application database that they have. So then we go tie it back to the database and we figure out, now we go all the way down to the engine room and now we realize, wait, for orders, you mean the pre-order, the post-order, the paid order, the shipped order? Now that's how we go back up that elevator. We realize, hey, we're seeing all these differences in the data. If we all use the word order, we all mean different things. This is a problem. Maybe we should be calling this the shipped order, right? This is the purchased order, whatever, right? And we go back up and we can explain why we need to go call that differently. Go up and down the elevator. And we're doing all this work just for that one question, and we're making that thread, which is iron. It's really strong. And then what I can do is that I can keep making that thread stronger. Let's add that next question that can add that next concept. And then, or you understand how this process, remember that the architect who's going through that elevator is making everybody else smarter. Now you can have other teams who can start doing that whole thing. And then you can have multiple threads. And then your threads will build meshes or fabrics, whatever you want to go call it. So, but to really make this work in practice, we really need to understand how our companies are organized. So two, two things I'm observing. And there's a lot of notion about what we call shift left and data contracts and stuff. I'm observing two types of companies. One, are you a company who produces their own data? You are a software company yourself. You're a technology company, right? You're a digital native company. You have software DNA. Or are you a company who just consumes data? I sell forks and knives. I have no idea about building software. I just use this ERP system, this marketing system, this CRM system. I have a very small data team, and they just do that, dumps in. I use a particular data warehouse lake or whatever, bring that in. So what does shifting left mean here? What does it mean, like, produce your data with the highest quality from the beginning? Well, if you're a data producer, if you produce your own data, you actually are able to say, hey, look, whenever you're generating this data in this application, make sure we're starting to have these contracts and these semantics and these models and so forth. If you're a consumer of that data, I'm like, wait, you're gonna go tell that third-party ERP system to go change their schema? Like, that's not gonna happen. Maybe you could say that the person who configured that CRM system should do it differently, but good luck with that. So maybe the data lands raw and you have to go fix it there. Perfect. So you need to understand those two types of things. And I call this out because there is, inside the technical LinkedIn blog bubbles, we're reading so much about data contract and shifting left. And I'm like, look, if you work at a company who's just a consumer of data, a lot of those blog posts don't apply to you. Don't confuse that. Other thing to understand is, where does data report into? Okay, so audience participation. Raise your hand if you know that your data reports into the CIO. Really, nobody? I call BS on this. Really, no? Okay. Who reports to the CTO? Okay, so you guys are probably product companies, or you're there, right? You are the guys who are actually, you are all companies who are actually producing software yourself. Who reports to the chief product officer? Right, same realm. CFO. All right, so you're probably more of a cost center doing things that are building reports for finance. COO, chief operating officer. Hey, usually those are the ones who are like, now, like, you're actually part of the operations. Like, how can we build more efficiency within the company? Chief customer officer or chief marketing officer. Usually, which is actually, this is not that common, but if it is common, it's because data is essential for us to how we bring in customers and do sales. Who reports to the CEO? Okay, so guessing probably a smaller company, startup, or its data is so strategic. By the way, there's a lot of people who didn't raise their hand, so who does not know where they report into? Okay, perfect. That's fine. It's just a good idea now to figure out. Because whatever initiative you want to get done, like, you need to understand, like, where did you reporting? That's part of the politics around this, right? The CIO, they're about, like, let's make sure that I have all of these software systems that we're building in to make sure that the company operates. So if you're part of data, there's always kind of like this. By the way, the folks who didn't raise their hand, I'm going to best guess that you guys report to a CIO. We manage all these tools. We got to pay all these vendors and stuff like do that. And here's the interesting thing also, within organizations, if you're in data engineering, understand where data engineering reports and where is data analytics, where is data science. Are you all part of the same team, or are you different team? Because what we see also is that the data analytics or data science, they're supposed to, like, hit the ground running with the data. And who is actually putting the data together and doing all of that semantic work and stuff? The data engineering team. But who's getting the requirements? Those data analytics or science teams. And there's a miscommunication right there. And some of the things that I'm seeing right now is people acknowledging that and saying, you know what? Back office and front office, let the analytics team be the front office, dealing with the business, understanding the requirements, defining the semantics, the data modeling, and we will pass the requirements to the data engineers who are going to be the back office and dealing with the platform. Understand this. I mean, this is the type of initiatives we need to be able to understand. By the way, if you report, for example, to the CFO, that means that you are, they see you as a cost center. So if you want to go do something innovative, you can't say, we're going to do this great, amazing. They're not interested in that. Now figure out how to change the language to turn innovation. I see you nodding. See, how do you change the language of innovation and turn that in a way of how we're going to go do this, saving money, saving money, saving money. So you talk about saving money, don't talk about innovation, but it's still the same thing. Again, this is the language. That's how we're going to get things done. Governance is about politics. Politics is not a bad thing, right? There are bad politics, but politics is about just getting people aligned so we can get things going. All right, almost wrapping up here. So other types of teams that we see, distributed teams, right? This is basically the all chaos. There are different departments, and there are people doing data stuff in a completely uncontrolled. They're not synchronized. This is kind of where a lot of data will start off with an organization. Then we start seeing a shift of centralized and federated. So if you're in a distributed team, meaning that everybody is kind of doing their own thing, the Wild Wild West, that means that there's a lack of data leadership, and hopefully you'll get that data leadership, and probably what's going to happen is first end up into a central team. So what happens now when you have central data teams is that you have this traditional bottleneck, right? Oh, there's a backlog of tickets to be done for generating these new reports, right? As I mentioned, it's central, but sometimes divided. You have the analysts and the data scientists, you have the data engineers on some side, they're not communicating. You have all these bottlenecks around that. So I think that's kind of a lot of the status quo that I'm seeing right now in the industry, that there's a lot of central teams. You have probably a VP of data or a CDO, and everything is underneath that. And they're trying to partner with different business units. Now, the next maturity we're seeing, and this is largely because of all the work of Data Mesh and Samak and company, is the whole federated nature, and this is what we're seeing more for maturing and scaling organization. So these are the ones who are actually, the data producing companies are the ones who are pushing on this first. They're usually doing data teams. They're already kind of adopting data mesh and data products. You'll still have a central team, which is like the CDO, the global CDO. And then you actually have the technical teams, right? Your data engineers, your data analysts, and those are going to be now embedded. Now that embedded is going to be either directly embedded inside of a different business unit, or they're dotted line. And every business unit will have some sort of a data leader. So understand that too, because when you're talking to, the dotted line means that I work for you, but actually my manager is central, right? All of that does a different politics you want to be able to understand. All right, so to wrap up, some quick examples here. This is actually the result. I was tracking working with a particular customer. What you're seeing here on the x-axis is the time every month, and the gray and the blue line are the amount of concepts that we added in an ontology after going through that whole cycle. And the yellow is the number of attributes. And what you saw, by the way, when we started this whole project with them, they said, oh, we need to be able to integrate 5 different databases. I'm like, well, no, not really. You need to go answer business questions. And what we were doing is that for the first kind of 8 months, we were just clearly just understanding a set of questions. And we were only just trying to understand one particular database. And then when we realized, okay, now we have the next requirements to get the next questions, we increased a little bit there, and that's when we added the second database. And then here, for almost a year and a half, we were just answering more and more questions. We didn't even add more concepts. We're adding more attributes to this. So this is just the idea of saying that we can act, like this is evidence that I have here, right? A little bit of anecdotal evidence, but a case study of working, like we can make this iterative approach work. This is Nachiket Mehta. He was basically kind of the data leaders at Wayfair. And this, I took it from a LinkedIn post. So I was talking about all this embedded governance. And he not only agrees, this is actually how he did it inside of Wayfair. This is an example of schema.org. Who's familiar with schema.org? Schema.org is a way how Google, Yahoo, Bing, and stuff almost 15 years ago got together to start building an ontology, a schema about all the things they care about the web. They've been doing this in a distributed, in an iterative manner. S&P Global has been doing the same thing. Wrap it up. Final thought. Why do we need to do this now? Because AI is the motivator. And in reality, by doing all this governance and this semantic work, we're driving reusability. Today, we do 1 unit of work to answer one question. What we need to be able to go do is 1 unit of work to be able to answer multiple questions. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. With that, as I said, governance is about being active. Know your organization to make this work. Iterate with the methodology. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Strive for that. Thank you very much.